Hey guys, it's FAQ Friday. Now we've got a lot of great questions to get into, so let's just jump right into it. Today's questions will cover a lot of things, but including gardening zones, cherry tomatoes, peppers, strawberries, organic pest control, including grasshoppers, what I think about Miracle-Gro products. And if you want to stick around to the end, if it's something you're interested in, I'm going to be going over a very quick overview of how I made the lava rock that surrounds us in this garden. Coming up. Okay, so the first question is from Glenda Lawson. Glenda says, Brian, how do you keep your plants looking so healthy? Every bug and disease on this earth resides in my little patch. That's a common complaint, especially for new gardeners. And I know we've got a lot of new gardeners on here this year, first-year gardeners. And the first thing I have to say is stick with it. Because when I first started my garden here on this property, that first year was horrible. Horrible. And that is because if you're gardening organically, you are needing to develop an ecosystem in your yard, in your garden. And it doesn't just happen overnight. It can take maybe a couple of years if you're really diligent and follow, kind of what I do. When I moved here, there was really only a lawn, a couple of big trees, and 3 shrubs. That was pretty much it. Now, it's hard to believe when you take a look around at what's here now, but this has been 7 or 8 years in the making. And when you have an ecosystem developed and you are gardening organically, the garden gets by pretty well on its own without help from me. Now, I want to recommend a movie. It's a documentary, and it's one of my favorite movies. It's definitely my favorite documentary, and it's called The Biggest Little Farm. And if you've seen that, you know how special it is of a place that they've created and how they have used nature to really take care of all of their problems, pest-wise. Interestingly enough, The Biggest Little Farm is Apricot Lane Farms, and they're actually about 15 minutes from my house. So anyway, I highly recommend that movie, especially for new gardeners. You really get an overview of what it's all about to garden organically or to farm organically on a bigger scale. That movie was a huge revelation for me, and I've been gardening for 30 years. In this garden, what you will see is the circle of life, and you will see certain animals and birds especially taking care of some of my pest problems. Birds, lizards, frogs, ladybugs, parasitic wasps, good bacteria in the soil, earthworms in the soil, beneficial nematodes, spiders, all the pollinators, all of these things work together. And even rats have their place. I know it sounds crazy, but I do complain about rats because they are pretty much the top of the food chain here. We don't have, neighborhood cats are only good to an extent, but they don't really control them 100% at all. And we don't have a lot of nocturnal predatory birds like owls here. And so they are the top of the food chain. However, having rats gives me 0 pests in the way of slugs and snails. I have no slugs and snails, haven't for years, because the rats eat them. Now that being said, traps do have to come into play because otherwise they are the top of the food chain, they will take over. So that is a super long answer to your question, but the big picture here is if you garden organically, develop an ecosystem, those pests are going to move on to greener pastures for them. But in the meantime, and occasionally even now, the neem oil, the BT, they help you along, and they do a great job of it organically. All right. W. Wu says, I am from Richmond, Canada, and it's zone 8 here. But when I go to the Farmer's Almanac, it says my frost date is October 19th. But when I search up zone 8, first frost date is December 1st. Please help me. So that can be confusing. What do you go by? Well, zones have very little to do with vegetable gardening. Zones are more of a hardiness for perennial plants. How cold of winters do you get? How long is that cold there? but mainly how cold do winters get and can your plants survive? Well, almost all vegetables are annuals anyway, so no matter what kind of climate you have, they're going to die at the end of the year and you have to start again the next season. So the hardiness zones in the United States and most of the world who have it are divided into 10-degree increments. And that just lets you know, do the plants I plant this year, do they have a chance of getting through my winters? Are they that cold and that long? So that's why you're going to see a wide variation in frost dates for a specific zone. There are only 11 zones in the United States, and there are millions of different frost dates for different people because it depends on where you are in that zone, what your microclimate is. For instance, I had someone contact me the other day from Texas, zone 9, 113-degree summers, high humidity, whereas about 20 minutes from me is I'm in zone 10, zone 9 is 20 minutes from me. 100-degree summers are the norm. 113 would be crazy. Not to mention there is no humidity in this zone 9, so it's very dry. So you can't go on zones. Go by frost date. There are only a few exceptions. There are some perennial vegetables, fruit trees like citrus. You want to know your zone because I think they can only do zone 9 through 11 maybe. They need warmth. They can't have cold winters. On the other hand, I can't grow certain things because my winters are too warm. A lot of your deciduous fruit trees, a lot of apples, pears, cherries. I have 2 apples, and those are almost the only 2 that I can grow in this zone because we don't get enough chill hours in the winter. I found 1 pear that I'm really excited about. I will be planting in January that will work in my zone. And unfortunately, I can't grow cherries because they just don't get a cold enough winter here. So anyway, stick with your the Farmer's Almanac and the frost date from there, not your zone when it comes to vegetables. Kirsten Fenner, can we get an update on your 3 sisters method? That was really neat. I thought maybe we would see that in this video a little bit. Thanks. Yes, I shot some video and I'll put it in right here. It's doing okay. I mentioned in that first video where I planted this that I started the corn early in egg cartons, so I had, you know, more to show you in that video, but I also mentioned that corn hates to be transplanted. So with the corn, some are doing really bad. The ones that are doing better are still stunted, so the beans are actually growing faster, and they may outgrow and smother them. The pumpkins are coming along nicely. So the moral of this story is, don't transplant your corn. Put your seed in the ground where you want it to be, and in the case of 3 sisters, it needs to be done a couple weeks before you plant the bean seeds. All right, this next one is from Crystal Snow. Thank you for the tips. This will get me started on growing carrots in containers. I'm still wondering if the Miracle-Gro potting soil is fit, or should I add something? Ordered green sand, but won't be here for months. So I've had a lot of comments, especially lately, about Miracle-Gro products, mainly potting mix. Here's my view on them. They aren't organic. They are chemical based. They put Miracle-Gro into the soil. And so that is going to do exactly what the opposite of what we were just talking about in developing your ecosystem. It's going to start tearing it down. And in response to that, you're going to now need pesticides, herbicides. Now, if you do a little research on who owns Miracle-Gro, that company has plenty of pesticides and herbicides for you to use that will kill everything in your garden. Conspiracy? I don't know. Looks over his shoulder. So I don't use Miracle-Gro products. Mary O'Kearsey, a friend local to Oak Park, Illinois, suggested, as the tomato starts to turn red, tie a brown paper lunch pack around the fruit, and the squirrels in Oak Park, maybe rats, won't see the fruit. Supposedly, if you plant green stripies, that also works. So I haven't used the paper bag method, but I have used cloth t-shirts, old towels, and you do tie those around the fruit, and it seems to work. I use those mainly when I'm going on vacation or something, maybe a quick trip in the summer when I have plants that or tomatoes that are starting to ripen, and I can't keep an eye on traps and stuff like that. So it does seem to work, so maybe paper sacks do as well. If you guys have had experience with that and it works for you, let us know in the comments. Okay, One Life writes in and says, grasshoppers, what to do? I don't have a huge grasshopper issue here. When they come in, I usually see them, a couple at a time. But here is where that ecosystem comes in. Just last week, I was sitting in the gazebo and I saw a bird come and grab a grasshopper and fly off with it. They're doing my work for me. But if you haven't gotten your ecosystem firing on all cylinders yet, there is a product that you can use. It's called Nolo Bait. I'll put a link down below, and it will work. It's a biological organic control for grasshoppers, and I think it works on crickets as well. I don't have a problem with crickets. I don't even know what crickets eat. Do they eat plants? It takes a couple weeks for it to for you to see results. You have to be patient, and you have to apply it exactly how the package says to apply it. Roxanne Chrisley, question: how far along in the growth cycle can you cut off the top of the pepper plants? My plants have been in the ground now since May. I don't think it's a matter of how long it's been in the ground as much as how tall it is. If it's anything over a foot tall, I probably would not top it at this point. Sockeye Punch asks, another helpful video, when you say cherry tomatoes, are you categorizing them all as small tomatoes like grape and sweet 100 types? And I would say yes. In my opinion, when I'm talking about cherry tomatoes, it's going to be anything smaller than a golf ball. That Girl 1 asks, what if I get no frost? I live in Nevada. Now this is on the seven vegetables you can plant in July. I didn't know there was a frost-free zone in Nevada. If you are in a frost-free zone, we have very little frost here. We have I think it's like December to February, which is our possible frost time, but we really only get maybe a couple of nights of frost per year. Now, when I lived by the beach, we had 0 frost. But that doesn't mean that you can plant all year anything, unless you're in the tropics. What it will mean is, so you can't plant a tomato in December or a pepper in December, but you can push the boundaries. So you can extend your tomato harvest, for instance, through Christmas, through December. You can, it's possible if you don't have frost to kill the plant and you're growing indeterminate types, you can still harvest. But for most of us, that just means we can extend the harvest, or we can plant or grow all the way through the winter with cool crops. If you have frost or snow, your cool season vegetables can be grown pretty much in a small window in the fall and a small window in the spring, whereas in a frost-free zone or low frost zone, you can plant in fall your cool season crops and grow them all the way through winter until March, April. David Anderson, I've tried strawberries in large gutters, but they are getting brown edges and some are dying. I water them daily, and the soil is usually fairly dry then the next day before watering. What's wrong? So what I have found in my gutters, this is the first year I've grown them in gutters, and for a while they were not doing so well. I was having the same issues as you, but when I installed drip, it has kept them evenly moist. It's every day. It goes on for about 10 minutes, and it keeps the soil quite moist, but they don't seem to mind. It's they've put on a lot of growth and a lot of new fruit since I've done that. The brown edges have gone away. It could also be a lack of nutrients. It's a very small root run they have in that rain gutter, and so you want to weekly fertilizing, with the NEPTUNES Harvest or some other liquid type fertilizer. That's going to help you a lot, and weekly wouldn't be too much in a small area like that. Not only do they have little soil to soak up the nutrients from, but they have more roots in a small space, and so they're competing for those nutrients. So more regular watering. If you can install drip, great. Maybe water twice a day, and more regular feeding should do a huge, make a huge improvement. Okay, the last question was actually a conversation that I was having with Marfa M, and she's really impressed with my tropical garden and lava bed ponds. I'd like to learn more about it. I said that I'd never really done that because I didn't have a lot of interest, but maybe there's more now. She said, thanks. Can you briefly tell, how did you make that awesome lava flow that looks like some volcano erupted near your backyard in the next FAQ Friday? Here we are. Lava flows is what I like most about Hawaii. So it is definitely unique. I've never seen another garden with fake lava flows, but it is embarrassingly easy. I'm not sure if I have video. If I do, I'll put some in, but I did take some pictures when I was making the bog garden and this garden. But really, whatever form you want the rock. I don't know if you can see the rocks back here. I'll put some video in, but any of these rocks, I even used back here, I used an old pumpkin. It was in the spring. Didn't need pumpkins anymore. I put pumpkins out and put some wire over them and some newspaper just to make the shape of the rock, and then I cemented over it. Anything you want to do, piles of dirt, anything that makes the shape of the rock. Take regular cement. It's got the little gravelly pieces in it, not mortar, but cement. Mix it up to where it's fairly loose, but it's still moldable. It should be able to stack up a little bit and not run down. You'll know that's the right consistency. And then just put about an inch layer over whatever form you have. Let it get not dry, but set, where you can kind of push on it and it feels hard, but it's not dry. And then you want to take a little bit looser mixture of the same cement and you want to wear gloves, like heavy duty gloves. Pick up the cement and fling it onto what you already have laid down, and that is going to make that texture. And it'll look okay, but what really brings out the color and the shading and the texture is painting it. And you want to use a concrete paint or stain, black, and I take a spray gun and I spray the entire thing, and that's going to give it the black. Now, to give it some real interest and make it look a little more authentic, because lava isn't strictly black, there are brown areas, get a spray paint can of kind of a reddish brown and then just barely mist that over the surface, and it's going to bring out a lot of the texture even more. And that's it. It is really ridiculously simple, but very effective. I had someone come into my backyard once and ask how I was able to import all of this lava rock. So works for me. Okay, that's it, guys. Thanks for joining me. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Always appreciate your questions and comments. And if I don't answer them in person, hopefully we'll get to it on an FAQ Friday. So keep those comments and questions coming. I do read them all and heart them, even though I don't have a chance to respond to everyone. I will see you guys on Sunday.